Rappin with ReefBum is sponsored by Bulk Reef Supply and Ecotech Marine.
Hey, welcome back everybody to another episode of Rappin with ReefBum. I'm your host Keith Berkelhamer. So, on today's live stream, I welcome Jay Brown, also known as Unorthodox Reef. What's up, Jay?
Hey man, how's it going?
Pretty good. Thanks for joining. I see there's a lot of fellow Canadians joining the stream here. See some
awesome.
Cindy, Reef Girl, and who else was from Canada? Peter T. So everybody's kind of finding the stream here, and I welcome everybody back to the show. Just for those that don't know who Jay is, I'm gonna just give a couple of brief facts. Jay has been in the hobby for over 20 years and has an online coral aquaculture business, unorthodoxreef.ca. He's in Canada, Ottawa, Canada specifically. His 400-gallon reef was actually featured recently on Reef to Reef as the Reef of the Month, so maybe you'll recognize the name Unorthodox Reef from that. That was an awesome profile, man. Enjoyed reading it.
Oh, thanks. Thank you.
And we'll certainly be digging into that in the live stream. Jay also has a really big following on Instagram, over 12,000 followers now on Instagram.
Yeah. It just kind of took off over the last couple of months.
Yeah. So you're you could find him as unorthodox_reef. I guess there's another Unorthodox Reef on Instagram, huh?
I think so, or maybe I just did that. I don't just to space it. I don't know. I was kind of trying to think of a name at the time, and that was the only thing I can think of. So
got it. All right. Well, before we dig into the conversation here with Jay, I just want to thank the sponsors for the show, both Bulk Reef Supply and Ecotech Marine. Appreciate these companies supporting the show and the live stream, and I also appreciate everybody out there tuning in. And as always, please contribute to the conversation. Ask questions in the chat. And if you haven't already, please hit that like button so more people can find the stream. So, Jay, man, tell us about your reef keeping journey. I mentioned you've been doing this for over 20 years. How did it all begin?
Oh, wow. I think it all began, my mom owned like a bakery a long time ago. And I was helping her do a delivery, and in one of the local stores at the time had set up a tank in a restaurant, and I saw it and I was like, "What? You could have a reef tank in your house?" So that was amazing to me. Like I knew from like we had one store I went to that just had saltwater fish, and I'd already at the time had freshwater that I converted to slowly to saltwater. But I didn't know you could actually have like coral and shrimp and all this stuff, right? So that kind of that took off, and then right away I'm out trying to make money to buy live rock, right? Because at the time it was like $14.99 a pound or $9.99 a pound. I still have that rock, so that's kind of
cool. Hold on to it, man. That's
yeah.
rare
I've
stuff.
kept every piece pretty much I bought for that for 20
What
years.
kind of live rock is it?
It's like some stuff I have no idea. I know I have a lot of Fiji. I have what is it? Pocani.
Yeah.
Most of my scape is Pocani, but I bleached it and then built it dry. So I kept majority of my rock in my sump and then bleached that. So, but then so after the live got live rock, set up a tank, and then it was just from there, just slowly just exploded into what I have now.
You jumped right into a reef tank. You didn't start with a freshwater tank.
No, I had a freshwater tank as a kid, always,
Yeah.
from when I was like probably 4 years old and on. Guppies, then cichlids and Oscars, brackish fish. So it was always had fish in my life, I guess, right?
Some of us are like that, I was the same way.
Yeah.
I didn't really have fish when I was a kid. My father had a fish only tank, saltwater fish tank. So that was like 125 gallons and no corals at the time. My first fish tank was a 2-gallon tank that housed some a Siamese fighting fish that I won at a festival in New York City. One of those fish bowl ping pong ball game type of things, and I won a pair of Siamese fighting. Oh no, I think it was goldfish. I think that's what I won. Goldfish.
Okay, and survived.
I no, did not. I bought the 2-gallon tank, and then eventually I didn't know what the hell I was doing, and it died. And then, of course, that just morphed into bigger tanks, and then I got into saltwater. So, what was the first? How big was your first saltwater tank?
I think it was. I'm gonna say a 30-gallon, like a 29. Basic like Petco tank.
Yeah.
And then I bought a 65-gallon, like the 3-foot by 18, and then I had that for a long time. I had seahorses.
Cool.
And just easy corals. And then I went from that 65 right up to a 125, I think, and then made my own lights. Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
All right, man. I got to ask you this question. What's behind the name Unorthodox Reef?
Okay, well, I always do things my own way, kind of like, so usually make my own stuff, do things a little bit differently, or don't follow all the trends, just do what I think's right and do it. So I was trying to think of a name at the time, like what's different, and I was making acrylic, like custom acrylic stuff at the time for friends and stuff, and I was trying to think of a good name, and it was hard, so it just ended up. I wanted something that ended in reef, that meant different. So I was just doing like the Google, like search for whatever, right? And then now I'm stuck with it. So.
Well, you're. I guess you always have choices, but I mean, especially since you got over 12,000 followers on Instagram, I think that would definitely not be a wise decision to all of a sudden change your name.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Change the Jay's Reef or something, right? No.
So this is. I mentioned in the intro that this is more than a hobby to you, right? You have an online business.
Yeah. So it's kind of taken a lot away from the hobby, but. Sometime, last year, I converted because I used to always sell frags and trade frags, and use that money to upgrade my tank. Yeah. And I'm like, you know what, I should actually do this legitimately. So I started, a Shopify website and got my, all the tax numbers and everything in place. And So now, yeah, I'm legitimate. I donate portions of my proceeds to the Canadian Cancer Society in memory of my dad. And so far, it's been good. I mean, I spend more money on my tank than than I could than ever make, right? But
No, I noticed that on your website. It says you donate 50% of your proceeds to the.
Yes, this year I'm doing that.
That's
yeah.
incredible, man. Very,
Oh, thanks.
very,
Yeah.
just impressive. So, fantastic. All right, so we were talking before the live stream about you say you're unconventional, you're unorthodox, and all that sort of thing, and you were describing to me the way that. So you mentioned to me that your 400-gallon tank is in the basement where you're at right now.
Yes.
and then we started. And I asked you the question. So how do you get a 400-gallon tank in a basement? Because I have all my tanks in a finished basement, and they went through the door, and that door jamb is maybe 34 inches wide or something, and I've got a 225-gallon tank, but it's only 20 inches tall, and my other tank is only 24 inches tall. So 400-gallon tank, man. How did you get it into the basement?
Okay, well, it started with I figured out I was gonna do it. So then I got a tape measure. Took the window out, measured what's the biggest tank I could fit through this window. Ended up being my window is like, with the framing and everything out, I had 29 inches by 42.5 inches wide. So I ordered a tank from Miracles Aquarium in Toronto, which ended up being 36 inches, but with the overflow box 42. So I had half-inch clearance and 28.5 tall. So I had half-inch clearance both sides. Made sure that they got that dimension right. Yeah, that's plenty, right? So I probably should have just put the overflow box on myself. Would have given, then I could have went deeper. So I went and picked it up 5 hours away with a tank, because you have to go slow. And when I got home, I had two of my friends here to help me. So we moved it with just 3 people. I built a 30-some foot ramp that was from my basement window outside to the same height as my truck.
30-foot ramp.
Yeah, so just 2x6s. So I basically like a dock, but I did with the 2x6 runners on top. And then I went to like the back of my truck with the tailgate down. And then I just kind of tried to guesstimate with the weight of the tank how the height of the tailgate would be when I set the ramp, and then had axle stands.
Was the tailgate parallel to the window? I mean, or did you have to like go at an angle?
So I'm lucky in a way that my backyard has like a slope. So I was able to kind of build the ramp out far enough that I can get it to a point where it's just a slight incline towards the house.
Wow.
So, and then, so when I pulled up, suction cups on the tank, we pulled it out of the truck and rolled it on 1 inch like plastic dowels, basically PVC pipe, but solid.
Yeah.
Rolled that, and I had it. So the ramp was set up so it had a 1/4 inch clearance, so it would clear the windows. Rolled it into the basement onto another ramp, like a stand I had built for the tank, and then picked that stand up with one of those hydraulic pump carts.
Yep.
They rent them at like a lot of moving places. And then so lifted that up, and then took my frame apart quickly and then rolled it over to the stand and slid it on with just 3 people. So.
And you were saying that it was really just 2 people because the third person was just kind of directing traffic
and making sure I wasn't hitting anything. Directing traffic and watching. So it was basically,
That's crazy, man. I mean, the biggest tank I've ever had to move is my 225. I've had two 225-gallon tanks, and I had to hire a crew, with suction cups and all that stuff. But I didn't have like, the same setup as you in terms of windows where I could go through and it was always like when the weather was a little dicey, well, I shouldn't say that. The second tank, the weather, I wised up and I didn't like order the tank during the winter time. But it's always very, very nerve-wracking moving a tank, and I can't imagine doing that with a 400-gallon tank. And
well, you mentioned weather, like, so I ordered my tank and it was like 6 months or so. And it came in end of November. So we had snow and freezing rain, and then it melted, and I'm just like, okay, we got to go get it next weekend. Hopefully it'll be ready, because after that, like, I don't want to be, if we get a foot of snow and I got to roll it, like shovel the snow on the ramp and it's freezing, like windows out in the house. So
yeah, my 187-gallon tank was moved in during a snow and ice storm, and we had to basically go around the side of the house down a hill. So there was no flat area. There was no cement walkway or flagstone or what have you.
Oh, wow.
It was like grassy, and it was very slick. And yeah, I had a big sigh of relief when that tank made it inside the house, because when the guy showed up, the mover showed up, they said, like, listen, given the weather, we can't guarantee that we're not going to bring the tank in safely, so you're going to have to just kind of like waive that that piece of it in terms of the liability piece.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, dude, I got no choice. It's going to be like 20 degrees tonight. I can't leave the tank in the garage. I'm afraid of the silicone seams being compromised by the seriously cold temperature. I was like, let's just go for it. But so what features do you like to have in a custom tank? If you had to do it again, would you change anything? Or
100%. I would change a lot. Yeah.
Would you?
I like the large overflow, but I regret a lot of it. So my biggest struggle with my tank is flow. Like I'm trying my hardest not to have any pumps in the ends. It would solve all my problems, but I just, it's hard for me to do. I put them there. My flow was perfect, but I just couldn't. So having that overflow box 5 feet long across the back, I can't put any pumps. Well, I can't put an MP40 or MP60. So I've got tonsies in there. But even so, because it's in an overflow box and the tank's 3 feet deep, I got to get on a step ladder, move my lights, reach in, try to grab them. The magnet falls off on the tonsie. So I wish I had two external overflow boxes that were smaller.
Yeah.
With a separation in the center, so I'd have space for an MP60 or something. I wouldn't have drilled the back top corners for my returns. That's always been a pain, because you put lock line and you try to put it close to the surface, but if there's a power outage, in a 400-gallon tank, that's a lot of water that goes to my sump. I have anti-siphon setup for my returns, which is basically a reverse check valve.
Yep.
But if it fails sometimes, so
I don't trust check valves. I really get very nervous with that, and so I basically just keep my return lines near the top of the water line, and so when the power gets cut, there's not a lot of water that I can back siphon in. You know what? Let's run the video. So Jay was real kind to put together a video for a few minutes of the tank and the equipment. So I probably jumped the gun in terms of starting to dig in on the tank, because a lot of people might not have seen your tank before. So let's run the video, and then we'll come back and talk about some more of the specific stuff. So let's roll the tape.
Hey everyone, this is my tank. It's 8 feet long, 3 feet deep, 28.5 inches high. I'm running tonsies and MP60s for flow on the back wall. It's a mixed reef. Try to keep it clean. I wanted to have that clean look. I've got Radion XR15 G5 Pros and Reef Brite XHOs for lighting. I made my own kind of light holder mount here, and all the Radions can slide back and forth if I have to adjust them. I wanted the XR15s just because I wanted more spread over a 3-foot deep tank, as you can see. And there's plenty of par. It's a mixed reef. As you can see, this is my kind of softy zone or LPS zone. Filly in the back and some leathers. My Fiji, yellow Fiji leathers closed right now, unfortunately. Sorry guys. Oh, there's my Regal. He's a beast. So far he's been amazing. Over here you can see this structure I have supported by a 1.5 inch acrylic dowel bonded to an acrylic plate. You can see you can kind of go all the way around it. I wanted flow to really travel well in this tank and not trap too much detritus. There's my Kenji Angel. He's been amazing. Like he could use picks here and there, but so far, just amazing model citizen. Love him. I'll walk around to the back room. Next to my tank, this is my fish room. Extra ESV. This is where I do fragging and maintenance. Saw, I have a sink. Still a work in progress. There's invert QT tanks, some fish QT tanks, frag tank, which is connected to my display, a Fugium, another frag tank below. I made all these tanks. They're all out of acrylic. That one's 4 foot by 4 foot sump. I've got here's my dosing pump. Pretty simple, just forehead dosing pump. That's all I do. Trident. I kind of use it to monitor. I don't let it control anything. UV sterilizer. I've got a Nio skimmer. I run my filter socks at the back to keep my pumps clean, or when I'm doing maintenance. Pretty much all of my wiring and controllers and stuff for the tunsies are back here. I keep all my bricks in a cabinet with computer fans that run when the lights are on, just to keep them cool. I want them to last. And just 10 over my tank plus the reef Brites.
And we are back.
Yep.
Wow, man, that's a lot to talk about. The the one thing I was going to mention at some point during the show, that's not a cheap angelfish, the Kenji angelfish. And
yeah.
Cindy mentions, like, question for Jay, is your fish stock list complete yet? Any others you plan to get? It's not complete?
It's never complete.
Never complete. But that Kenji angel, man, that thing is like, that's not cheap. Dreamfish?
No, Dreamfish. No. I remember reading an article a long time ago on Reef Builders about it, and I was like, I got to have this fish one day. I'm like, oh, I'll never be able to get it. And then we have an amazing store in Toronto called Candy Corals. So he messaged me. He's like, I've got a Kenji angel. So he hooked me up. I was lucky.
Yeah, I would probably never personally invest that kind of money because I'd be scared, like, just crazy, that the thing would kick the bucket on me. But I've never been like a person that would spend a lot of money on fish. But one of my favorites is the Regal angelfish, and I saw you had a Regal in there too. And I've got a Misbar Regal, which is kind of like my holy grail.
Amazing
fish. Yeah. You see them rarely, but they are around.
The Regal was like just a thorn fish. Like, I could never keep a Regal. I'd always get bad. Well, I'd just get a really sick one or a bad one. And this Regal was like, I had him in QT months. It was just bad luck. I got him. He had almost every disease possible. And then I did, 14 days copper, then transferred it out, and then velvet popped up. So it was just non-stop, but he survived everything, and he's amazing. Like, he comes to me every time he sees me. It's like the personality is amazing on angelfish. It's
Yeah.
they're worth every coral they'll eat.
So Marcus's Reef is wondering how much is the canned angel typically? What do they retail for?
They were on sale around Christmas for like 2,500 Canadian.
Oh, that's I thought like in the States I've seen them like 5-6 grand or something.
Yeah, they're like 5 to 7 grand normally, US. So there was a great deal on them this winter. Some of our stores brought in like 50 plus gem tanks from Madagascar. So they added those to the list, and I'm assuming they got good pricing because of the amount of tangs they bought.
Yeah.
Or it was part of a deal. Like you get an angel if you buy this many gem tangs, and I got lucky. So
what's a gem tang retail for in Canada?
Right now they're on sale for $4.99 Canadian, which is cheap considering what they were.
What they used to be.
2 years ago. Yeah, the one I have I bought 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago. He wasn't $4.99, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's too bad you can't frag it, But
yeah, I wish. Yeah, no.
Question from Mark Hibbard: has Jason experienced with the what? I guess the question is, what's your experience with the Tunzi magnets and the overflow? Has it been good? Sometimes having magnets in contact with water can cause issues.
The Tunzies they're magnets. They seem to have a really good epoxy coating. So far, no issues. My only issue is when I go to pull the pump off to clean the Tunzi. Like if you've owned one, it has like a cup.
Yeah.
So the turbelle snaps into that. Sometimes if it's tight, you go to pull it, the magnet, because the 3/4 inch glass, even though I have the upgraded magnets, I'll pull that whole magnet off, and then the magnet falls in the overflow. So then I have to get like a scraper or whatever and try to fish that magnet out.
That's a drag.
And then find it. Then yeah. So that's my only issue with them. I mean, great pumps. The cord on them is like 15 feet long.
Yeah.
So when you're cleaning them, you can reach in, grab them, take them out, put them in muriatic acid or citric acid, and it's that's what's good about them. But I mean, and you can angle them. So
they could push a lot of water. I used to have 2 Tunzies on my old 225-gallon tank, and I had basically this back channel. I had 2 islands in this 225-gallon tank. And I had 1 Tunzi on each back corner, just facing one another. And yeah, man, they just it was a 6-foot long tank, and they just pushed a lot of water. It was awesome, great surge, They
push a lot of water, and they're simple. Like you can use it if you're using the Apex, or you just use their controllers they come with. It's simple to set up, and you just got to watch the wave and get it adjusted. I mean, it's nothing compared to like the Ecotech Mobius app and just sitting on your couch and setting your flow, right? I wish Tunzi would come out with something like that, but no, they've been good so far for me.
So your Aquascape is really cool. Could you talk to us about in terms of how you put that together? I love the it's kind of gives you the feel that you're in a cave almost. In terms of the way you've got it set up, but how did you get the dry rock?
Okay, so I wanted it to be, I guess, unorthodox.
There you go.
So I wanted different. I always like the look of shelves. So my left Aquascape, it might be hard to tell in the picture, but it's a really long shelf, and it's actually only touching the sand bed in like a 12-inch radius. So I wanted to make sure flow can go all the way around it. So that was made with eMarco 400. That was during when BRS was doing all the videos on their negative escape. So I used that and crazy glue and accelerator and bleached dry rock and slowly built that shelf, made sure it was weighted a certain way, and then glued it to an acrylic plate so it has a smooth surface on the bottom. So when it's sitting on the tank, and then the far right one that's kind of shaped like an upside down triangle.
Yep.
That one, I glued all the rocks with eMarco. I cored the center of it out with a diamond hole saw as I went, and then slid it over an 1.5-inch acrylic dowel that's bonded to a 1/2 inch or 3/8 acrylic plate.
That's not going anywhere.
Yeah, it does scare me. Like, like I could reach in the tank and grab a corner and spin it.
Oh,
Which is
really?
kind of weird. Like, yeah, so I could, if I wanted to, I could actually turn it at all times. I can spin it around the dowel. So that, and I'm worried like one day all the acro is going to grow more on one side, and then is it going to tip over on my glass? But
Oh, you could
I give it a wiggle every once in a while, and it seems okay.
You could just spin it around, get a different view.
Yeah. So I did all that because, yes, I'm losing coral placement because I have a lot of shaded areas now. But I wanted a big white sand bed. I wanted it to look like it's somewhat natural, but not like, and with the stags on the one side, reaching out towards the surface, it gives it like that big, like, I guess, triangle sculpture. So it was a lot of coral placement planning, and
yeah, no,
came out.
It's really cool. I mean, so how did you plant frags on that thing? Did you do any drilling in terms of holes for frags in the scape, or you just been kind of super gluing or putting the frags?
Just super glue, because it's all pretty like old Pukani rock and Fiji rock. It's very porous and very light, so there's always lots of crevices.
Yeah.
But it's all, that I usually use there's a BSI coral glue, and or the Ecotech. I just basically, crazy glue on a finger, prime the area, and then crazy glue on the frag and jam it in, and hope I don't get in a fish's mouth again.
Yeah, I talked about it in a couple of my videos, but I've been having issues with my Peninsula tank in terms of gluing frags in and having them actually stick and stay. And I think I had this biofilm that was on the I started the tank with live rock. It was KP Aquatics live rock, and but there was like this little biofilm on it.
Was it like blackish, like kind of like
reddish, brownish biofilm on it, and so I never really encountered that sort of thing. But when I planted the frags, I probably should have brushed the spots where I planted the frags better than what I did. And despite super glue, putty, and super glue, and then the frag, there were still like falling off months later.
Yeah.
And
oh wow.
And then I used also Brightwell's razor, which is like a polymer, and it just kind of like helps loosen things that are accumulating on the rocks and the tanks, like algae and all that stuff. So I think that also kind of contributed to the issue in terms of stuff falling off. That never happened to me in all the years I've been doing this stuff. I never had an issue with frag sticking to the rock. So it's been frustrating. But I'm gonna be redoing my my 187-gallon tank because it's just so chock full of corals, and I'm gonna be swapping out the rock on it. And I've already like pre-drilled holes in the in the rock just to.
So you are tearing that down.
I am doing that, yeah.
Okay.
In May, either April or May. It just depends on when I get the courage to actually start ripping that thing apart. But let's not talk about me. Let's talk about you.
Okay. I would say every time I go to glue a frag, though, I always take a pair of coral cutters, and I kind of like cut at the area and then try to chip away till I get a good part of clean rock, and then prime the area of glue. And that seems to work, but the coral has to encrust over it.
Right.
Quickly,
I mean, I had, my frags were like encrusting on the rock, like pretty decent amount of incrustation, and they were still coming off. I was like, what? It was like, even like a 1/2-inch radius around the frag.
Oh, wow.
And it would, like it would fall off. And I was like, that is just completely bizarre. Completely bizarre.
You also see in my tank, I have a lot of encrusting Monty.
Yeah.
I use them as like coral hold fast. So a lot of times I'll extend my rockscape and then I'll glue it all together, and I'll cut up an encrusting Monty into like 20 little 1/2-inch pieces, and then I'll glue that all over where I glued and then eventually it encrusts and becomes a one rock. As long
That's a
as
good
what
idea.
it's next to, as long as what it's going to encroach on, it'll lose.
Yeah, and I guess you got to make sure that it's a
Yeah.
it's a gentle Monty, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what's happened to me. I put a few Monties in my tank, and they've encrusted like crazy, and yeah. So it's good and it's bad. I mean, it's a beautiful thing because it just kind of like covers all the rock, like you said, it bonds it together. It's I think it's a really cool look to pretty much like have corals covering everything.
Yeah.
But and it Monties are pretty gentle in general. So you're not going to like have an issue in terms of like creeping up on an acro.
The only one I've had issues like the Sunset Monty. I had to take out a deep water acro and what's it called? I think a Locani, or there's like a smooth skin acro. I've had it beat that where it's just like a slow loss and eventually covered my frag. It was in a spot where I couldn't actually get it.
Yeah.
So I just kind of watch it slow death.
So how was your cycling process with the dry rock? What was your what was the protocol there? What method did you use to kind of get that tank ready for corals?
Zero. So well, I had a 220 gallon before this tank, so this was an upgrade. My 220 gallon was on the main floor. So I connected all the tanks together. So I filled this tank up. So it was dry rock, all new salt water, and heated the water up to the same temperature, matched my parameters, which is important because you care for what salt you use. You want to make sure the salt you're using is going to be close to your alkalinity level. So I matched the parameters and then just turn the valve and let them mix together for 2 days or so. And then slowly just transferred all the fish and corals on that weekend and then shut the other tank down. So
you were able to kind of seed it with a little mature tank water.
Yeah. My mature tank water was all connected. The sump was the same sump. So I had my refugium. I moved and then every coral I broke off had a chunk of live rock on it, and then
that'll help.
Yeah, and then all the leftover rock from the main tank got tossed to my sump that weekend. So it was just that's it. No patience. I don't have patience for I shouldn't say that because I don't want someone to just try to start a reef tank on a weekend. But if you do it right with live rock, it's possible. I mean, I rinsed all the rock I moved.
So
salt water.
So you did you transfer corals in from the old tank to the new tank?
Yeah.
And any issues in terms of once that transfer was done? Any die off, or was everything pretty much happy? And it just took a while for things to start getting back into gear.
I had issues with lighting at the beginning, so I switched my lighting at the same time. So I switched over from I had T5s before and Max Spec razors and Reef Brite XHOs on my 220. I switched to Radion at a lower par than what I had before.
So what par was that?
I was in some spots before I was like 500 micromoles. In my new tank at the top with the XR15s, when I set it up, I only put them at like 55%. I think it was like 200 par, or 200 micromoles. Sorry. So I'm like, oh, I'll start off low, and instantly I started like my chalices bleached, like completely turned white, like they started bleaching out, and it was going downhill. Some macros were fine, and then some you can tell when they're starting to bleach, like they're growing fast, but they're losing their color.
Yeah.
Until I turned the red and green down, then everything kind of started coming back.
How did you know to do that?
Maybe it was just it was like maybe it just my thoughts. Like I always like overthinking, but before with my old lights, because I started like thinking about like, well, what's different, right? And with the rate, I was missing the green and red is a lot stronger on the Radions than what my tank was used to. And I just when I set it up, I just did AV plus and said go. So there's probably lots of other things, right? Like T5 is gentle, but on corals, like I've never bleached a coral with T5. So I mean, that was pretty much the only issue. Fish, for some reason, all of a sudden just started to hate each other.
Oh no.
Fish that I've had together forever, for years. Like I had tangs together for 10 years and they were fine. And then all of a sudden they're enemies, right? So I had to move fish around.
Was this a more open aquascape though than what you had before? Can I assume that?
Well, yes and no. Like I had an 8-foot frag tank, also, and in that tank I had 3 yellow tanks, and it's all open. It's just a frag rack, right? Those 3 yellow tanks got put in the display together, and no, I had to remove 2.
Oh.
And keep I just kept the docile of them. And now since then I've ordered biota captive bred yellow tangs, and I had a group of them. They're amazing. So that's
how many do you have?
Right now I have 3. So they kicked one out. They decided one couldn't stay, and then I lost one. So, but no, but they're tough. They're strong. At first they weren't as yellow, but that only lasted like a month and a half, and they're bright yellow. I mean,
folks, just remind you, if you want to ask Jay some questions about his system, go for it. Just drop a question in the chat, and also want to remind everybody to hit that like button so more people can find this live stream. So you, I love the clean look of the tank, and you went with sand. What have you always had sand in your reef tanks?
Always had sand. There's creatures I couldn't have a reef tank. I couldn't not have in a tank, right? Like I love, tiger tail sea cucumbers. I mean, they're gross.
I've got them too. They just keep multiplying.
Yeah, they keep multiplying. I mean, they do fill your rocks with sand. Which is kind of cool because the way my rock work is, because it fills up and then it all spills out at the bottom. So it gives like the sand kind of looks like it looks like I'm actually moving the sand towards the rocks, but that's the cucumbers doing that. I love watching pistol shrimp and goby pair. I mean, they're so simple, but when they come out and you're feeding, they're right there. You could watch them for a long time. Just all the life that's in the sand. I mean, you can have like it's good for wrasses. You can have wrasses without sand, but I've always had sand, and
Do you let your cleanup crew do the maintenance, or do you do any siphoning yourself, or you just leave it?
I usually just leave it. I have a lot of cleanup crew, except for at about the 1 year mark in my tank, I got hit with dinos, and then so for like 2 months I was cleaning my sand bed every second day. A long battle. So I still see a random little spot of like brown algae on the sand. I'm like, is that dinos or diatom? And you get all stressed, but like there's no bubbles. I'm good.
Yeah. James Scott is wondering, what do you feed, Jay, and how often in terms of your fish?
Okay. I don't think I feed enough, but I'm probably feeding too much. So with all the fish I have in the morning, my routine now has been probably about 4 cubes of frozen. Right now I'm feeding Gamma. There's a Gamma pack. It's like a blister pack they have. So I feed in the morning. I feed like Cyclopses and
I can't
Pacifica
find
krill.
I can't find that stuff in the States.
I think they sell it at Petco in the States.
Do they?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's a Petco brand.
All right, I'll have to look for that. Is it
and Live Aquaria?
Or is it like
Live Aquaria has
is it frozen? Like I used to buy it like in a bar.
Yeah, it's frozen. It's frozen cubes.
Cubes. Okay.
I'm pretty sure Live Aquaria has it, where they did when I was Googling it, when I got it anyways. So I feed that, a mixture of frozen in the morning, and then I have an auto feeder that turns on 4 rotations a day for pellets for the Anthias. And then at night, I feed when I walk by the tank, probably, which sometimes is more. So it's usually seaweed or flake. I always have an auto feeder since for the reason that if I ever go on vacation, that I want to know that I can at least have that set up. I'll still have someone come feed frozen.
Yeah.
But that peace of mind that, there could be 4 or 5 days where they could just run off pellets. So, plus it's funny, the fish hear it, right? And you can tell, or they sense what time it is, because I'll be in the basement and the auto feeder is about to start up, and then they're all over in the corner of the tank.
Oh, really? They sense it. So you keep that auto feeder on all the time.
Yeah, and the Angel, it's his favorite is pellets, so that's going to be on forever, I guess. Yeah. New Life Spectrum pellets.
I use those too. Yeah. So it sounds like you do a lot of feeding and you feed a good variety.
Yeah. But for coral food, I have done reef rides in the past, but I always find that my phosphates just go up. And the corals respond, and then do the acros take it? I don't know. Sometimes if I have a sick coral, I'll isolate it and target feed it. Pretty much I rely on fish poop, and I've done acro power.
I drink that same Kool-Aid, man. I don't really use aminos or coral food. I just think that fish poop is is a good thing. So I just try to feed my fish a lot and let nature do its thing.
Yeah, I see a lot of that on the forums. There's always that question: is I'm going to dose this, and this, or people have 4 dosers and they're running all these additives in their tank, and it's just too much. It's too complicated. I just dose ESV. I haven't got a calcium reactor yet. I should, but
how many mLs a day are you dosing the ESV 2-part?
310 each.
Yeah, I was doing that. I was doing like 300 in my 187 gallon tank. I was like,
wow,
man,
that's crazy.
Breaking my, it's just killing me. So I switched to a calcium reactor. And Kalk also.
Yeah, I need to, but now ESV is so cheap. It's
for you.
It'd be cheaper to have a calcium reactor. Yeah, it'd be cheaper to have a calcium reactor. But I just dread having one more thing to take apart and clean.
You don't have to clean them that often. Like every
no, okay.
Like I clean my calcium reactor. How often do I clean it? Whenever I need to replace the media, and 5-6 months or something like that, because I'm also dosing the Kalkwasser. So calcium reactor's not always on. And
okay.
Yeah, listen, it's there's I've had great success doing 2-part too. It just got very expensive for me. Yeah,
and every time I open up one of those 8-gallon kits of ESV, and then it's rock solid.
Yeah, it's a pain in the ass, right?
I spent an hour breaking it up in the sink full of hot water.
Yeah.
I say, I'm gonna get a calcium reactor, and then the next day it fades. I built my own calcium reactor. I just haven't finished it.
Oh, really?
So, yeah, I'm trying to make one that is, it's got the 2 chambers, and then I want to have a 3rd off-gassing chamber to see so I can keep my pH up. So I'm trying to and make it in a certain way that I can purge it to self-clean it. So, I mean, it's like 4.5 feet high. I might have went too far, but with acrylic, everything's easy, right? You can I don't
know, man. You're a lot handier than I am. I mean, you're making your own. I think in the video you mentioned you made your own sump and frag tanks too, right?
Yeah, they're all acrylic. It's all solvent welded. Once you do it a couple times, it's easier than you think. Like it's the hardest part is making sure your cuts are perfectly clean and being patient and keeping everything square. But yeah, no. I always try to do things my own way.
Well,
to save money.
With reef keeping, that really does come in handy. To do it yourself in terms of equipment and what have you is a great way to save money, because this is not a cheap hobby, obviously, in terms of what you can spend on equipment and what you can spend on livestock. And so to be able to figure out ways to make it more economical by doing it yourself is an awesome thing. And I do a lot of do-it-yourself stuff too, but I'm not building my own fish tanks. That ain't gonna be happening.
Yeah, I've only had one fail, so
only one, huh? Hopefully that was a small one.
Yeah, I was on holidays for a week, and it was I had I built a quick little sump, and for a small seahorse tank, and the sump split when I had someone came check on the tank, and so that sucked. Everything survived. So
Really?
I mean,
Wow.
besides my laminate flooring, everything else was fine.
Yikes. That's a nightmare.
Yeah.
All right. Bert Minshew is asking, what are your parameters? You're talking about,
Okay.
feeding your fish a lot and what have you. So let's start off with nitrate and phosphate. What do you like to keep those at?
Over the past year, everywhere.
Hmm.
It's been with dinos and everything, but I used to always try to keep as long as I could see them on the test kit, I was happy. And if it started to run away from me, then I would increase my vodka.
Oh, so you dose vodka?
Well, I do dose vodka, yeah. But right now, I've been keeping higher nitrates. This week my nitrates are 12 ppm, and my phosphate is 0.092 right now. So it's funny, right? It's like the tenuous are so happy at that, and certain corals their coloration is amazing, and then some corals not as happy. So it's at any given time, I always have one coral that's struggling.
Yeah.
So you're always tweaking. I just need to back away. But I raised my nutrients when I had dinos just to kind of encourage more algae growth, and it worked. But I'm going to slowly let them come down. So to answer that question, my target is going to be between 5 and 10 nitrate, and my phosphate probably 0.02 to 0.06. I'm going to say 0.07, around that area. Just kind of and adjust my vodka accordingly.
So you're doing a refugium and you're vodka dosing.
Yes, right now my refugium is pretty much empty.
Oh.
I just have a couple like small, like a little bit of Kato, some macros and here and there, but I pulled all the refugium when the dinos hit. I pretty much pulled most of it out, just because I didn't want anything. I was trying to increase my nitrates and phosphates, so I was pulling, and I was messing with the ratio to encourage cyano. I don't want to recommend this to anybody else, but I was fooling around with it to encourage cyano, to let the cyano beat the dino, and then afterwards I just stabled everything out and the cyano died off. So
is that how you eventually beat it? I mean, or did you do UV or something? Or
I did buy UV, but I had the sand dino, the large cell, which is
bummer.
Well, I can't even pronounce it, Amphimidium, whatever. So UV didn't really help, although you do see it off gas. You see like the bubbles, and then it started to encrust up the side of the back wall, and it completely covered the coralline on my back wall, and then killed all the coralline off. So at night, when it's in, like, I'm hoping that some are getting sucked by the UV. Plus, I wanted the UV for water clarity.
Yeah. And
also, I've always wanted one. I've never had one, and since I've had one, I don't think I'd ever take it off. For the price of them, how clean my water was, how crystal clear it was.
You doing activated carbon too?
Yep. When I remember. It's basic, right? I don't have a reactor. I just fill up a bag of activated carbon, toss it in my sump, and hang it from a screw. Like it's or a filter sock if I'm running filter socks that month.
Stick it in a filter sock.
Yeah.
Plus, you don't run the filter socks all the time.
No, for the first year this tank was set up, I didn't have any filter socks or anything. But I shot back the sump and everything. If I'm doing maintenance or moving the sand, I'll put a filter sock in. I mean, they're easy. I have 10 of them or so, and I just rotate the 7-inch socks out weekly. Throw them in a bucket and wash them all at once. But I don't know. Like, I don't mind the detritus in certain spots. Like, I've never. Is it bad? Is it good? I don't know. It's been an argument we've had for 20 years.
Yeah, I try to siphon when I do water changes. I'll siphon out the whatever I can see in the sump. of both of my systems. I'll siphon out. My system with the sand bed, I don't touch the sand bed. I like we're talking about. I got the tiger tail sea cucumbers too, and I think they do a big they contribute a lot to the keeping that thing clean. I also have the Nassarius snails. So yeah, I don't. And the only thing I do in that tank is I take a power head and I'll blow the rocks every other day to get the detritus off of that.
Okay.
And in the other system, the 225 gallon tank, that's a bare bottom, and I get the detritus settling at the far end of the tank. So I'll siphon that out once a week when I do the water changes, but I'll also do the power head on that, and I just get like all the detritus like just going all over the water column, and I kind of think it helps in terms of the corals. I think the corals like that stuff, and the fish kind of get freaked out every time I do it, but I think it's think it's been helpful. And I had a little bit of cyano at that part of the tank, and since I started doing that, I don't have the cyano anymore, which is good.
I think it helps let things breathe again. So like if like my old 220, there were spots where you couldn't get to, you'd see it all in the rocks. It'd just be like this wall of like, and you'd see it'd be like filaments, and it'd all be stuck to the filaments. So the rock is kind of all full of this detritus, and the water can't flow through it.
Yeah.
Also, when I set this up, I tried to have my pumps in a certain way. So when they push, like you'll see like a pump always pulls when it pushes. And there's always like below the pump, that's always a spot where you always find like broken bits of coral or food or fish waste is always at the bottom. So if that is not above a rock, that's not always dropping into your rock. Like a gyre will, move all the water, but if you're not careful, it'll dump all that detritus back into your rock work. So,
yep. All right, we're talking about two-part before, and we got a question from Louis Williams. Is it common to dose kalkwasser and two-part together? I've never done that, but typically, I guess when you do two-part, you don't have an issue with pH, and you don't necessarily need to dose the kalkwasser. I guess I'm not sure I caught it, but what does your pH typically run at with the two-part?
Well, if it's right, who knows? But right now I've been between 8.2 and 8.5. That's the butter zone. Yeah. So I mean, before it was like 8.1 to 8.56, or 8.55 around. It would be sometimes it'd be really high, but then I reversed my refugium and my frag tanks. So I have two frag tanks out of the system. So now my pH doesn't spike as much, so it's closer together. But it's between like 8.23 and 8.45. I did get kalkwasser, and I do have it set up to go, and I was gonna try to kind of just get a little bit more, but then I stopped myself. I'm like, hey,
well, yeah, with your pH in that range, then not really in much of a need, but if you do switch to a calcium reactor, you might have to.
And that range is probably like, I mean, I don't want to say people shouldn't be like stressing and going out and buying CO2 scrubbers and things like that, but which I don't know if even do anything. But my tank's only 15 months old, so if you look and if you go back on Instagram, probably 800 posts ago, you'll see like the white rocks, and you'll see some of the acros, like that stag on the right. It was a couple branches and like 8 inches tall, and I've had to cut it back twice where it right out of the water. So, and there'd be times when they were growing so fast I couldn't frag some corals. So because the growth, the white new growth would be over an inch long, right? So you'd have to really cut back far to frag them, or else it's so soft and brittle. So, and I think I attribute that to pH and things, but eventually my nutrients, I couldn't feed enough to keep the corals happy, and my nitrates bottomed out. So now I'm dosing nitrates.
I don't know, man. The way your tank's looking right now with all those corals, chock full of corals, you might have to think about a reset pretty soon.
Yeah. I've been pulling out acros probably once every 2 weeks. I pull out one and move something over, or move a coral. I'm trying to decide, do I want to just keep fragging and keep all the corals in there or do I just let a few get big, which I'm probably going to do, and start pulling out the ones that aren't doing as well in the areas of bad flow, and eventually it'll be probably 10 different corals. We'll see.
That's what I got.
I
I
mean,
mean, in my tank
Yeah.
that's just chock full that I'm going to do the reset on, I've got about 10 dominant corals right now. I mean, it's a great look.
Mhm.
I love the I love the look. It's just that it's getting to pretty much choking out stuff that I really like, and when you start losing a lot of real estate and you've got this obsession with acros, and the fact that you only can have a few in one tank, then you got to kind of weigh the options in terms of, do I want to just continue on the way it's looking? I mean, it looks great. I'm starting to get a little RTN, recession here and there from the areas I'm not getting a lot of flow. Are you running into that issue at all with your tank at this point?
I've had a lot of issues with like random issues where things don't make sense. Like there's one coral, it's perfect, and the coral next to it, it's dying. Like, and no matter what you do or try to fix it, it's flow, right? It's always been flow, because as they grow, a coral grows and it blocks the flow from the other one. So now I'm at the point, instead of fussing, I just pull those corals out, move them into my frag tank, and eventually my frag tank will just be a colony tank, I guess.
Yeah.
Because you can't get rid of corals. You hoard them, I guess.
Yes, we are hoarders.
Yeah. So there's always an issue, right? With like you're always gonna find and obsess over one coral, and then it'll ruin your reefing experience. So, but I'm at the point now where I have enough corals. I say that. I mean, I'm always changing. I want to have do a plate coral garden, but I'm scared to buy any more acros. Like I don't have really any acro. I've never had acro eating flatworms. I've never had red bugs. So that fear of that next frag, unless it's from someone I know and trust, that one frag can ruin my whole reefing experience. When really I should be happy with what I have.
Yeah, no, there was always that kind of thought in the back of your head in terms of like, all right, do I keep bringing stuff in? Do I keep bringing stuff in? And I've got a quarantine tank set up, and
okay.
Do you quarantine stuff when you bring it in? Or you just pretty much dip and.
I quarantine everything now. At first, I used to always dump and pray like 10 years ago, but now everything. Like,
what's your quarantine process?
I quarantine all inverts coming in. So I tried snails I'll clean and put them. I have an invert only tank, and that tank is my invert only and coral quarantine tank. So any corals that I get usually go into there, unless it's from somewhere I know or a really trusted source. Pretty much I just monitor for the 72 days. I do crank the temperature up a bit more on that tank to speed the process. But I'm at the point where with the fish I have, I can't risk it. So I quarantine fish. All my fish go through quarantine. It's a lot of work.
So do the corals that you're quarantining, does that include the acros? Do you are you dipping them when you put them in the quarantine tank, and you constantly dipping them like once a week or something until you get them out of quarantine, or are you just kind of dipping them once and then you observe for like the period of time?
I haven't added an acro in over a year to my tank. So all the corals I have were corals I bought, like acros I bought a year ago. So it was kind of, and that time, it was all dipped. If I were to get an acro frag from anybody, I cut it off the frag plug.
Yep.
I will never put any rock or any dead coral tissue in my tank. I wouldn't risk eggs or anything transferring over. That, like, before, I mean, like you get burnt, right? You buy a colony, a mariculture colony, and it's got flatworms. and it looks good, looks perfectly clean at the store, and then all of a sudden, bam, your tank's done. And you can dip and dip and dip, but if you just buy it, cut it right off the rock, throw the rock away, cover every piece of exposed tissue with crazy glue, so it's sealed, and then re-glue it to something, and that's a pretty good. Eliminate a lot of risk. I mean, I've always done the Coral RX dip too. I know you use water softener salt. I caught that.
Yeah, potassium chloride. I started doing that.
Okay.
Ty from former Ty's Frags turned me on to that stuff. Yep. It's awesome.
How much do you put for like? So you just like grab a handful and crush it and throw it in like a.
No. So the potassium chloride, it comes like at 40-pound bags, and it comes like these large crystallized chunks. And so you basically have to pulverize the chunks into a powder. So you get it into a powder form, and then I use 2 teaspoons per 1 gallon of tank water, and that's the that's the ratio that I use, and do the dip for like 30 minutes, and you can actually see. Versus like using the Bayer Advanced Insect, the insect killer, that stuff. I don't know if you ever use that stuff. And
I've tried, but it's really hard to get in Canada. I don't know. I think
you don't need it anymore. I mean, first of all, it's like dangerous. It's like a poison. So it's not good. If you like somehow ingested that stuff, it wouldn't be good. And it's also milky white, the Bayer stuff is. So you can't see any worms or anything falling off the frags. Whereas this potassium chloride, it's like a clear solution. So you know exactly, if you get like some frags and you see like a pest coming off of it, then you're like, oh, okay, that's a big red flag. Then
and do you do it with flow? Do you have a little return pump in there?
I use a turkey baster.
Okay, just baste them. Oh, cool.
And you could see them fly and run off. So and I also have this high-powered microscope, and so I'll do what you said. I'll cut each frag off the plug, and then I put it under the high-powered microscope just to see if I just to check to make sure there's no eggs that still remain on the frag itself. And but the potassium chloride is pretty gentle to the acros. I knock on wood, have not lost one acro to that dip. So it's and it's when you buy a 40-pound bag of that stuff, that's kind of like a lifetime supply for like 40 or $50 US bucks.
Yeah.
Versus
especially if you have a water softener, you always have.
Yeah, I don't need a water softener, but I hopefully will have a lifetime supply of acro-eating flatworm dip for that.
Wow.
So a couple of questions, and I'll again, folks, encourage you to ask questions in the chat. Just fire away. James Scott is wondering, Jay, do you do water changes, and if so, how much, and how often?
Okay. I try to do a minimum of 35 gallons a week. So what is that?
About 10%.
With my system volume, I'm pushing over 600 with the frag tank. So it's like 5%.
Yeah.
I did the auto water change for a while, and eventually I got rid of that idea. So I do one shot, 35 gallon. I basically just turn a valve, turn off my return pumps. The water backflows into my sump. I turn a valve, pump it outside, and then turn another valve and pump it from my water change station into the tank, and that's it. And then I'll go in and clean spots every month. But with the quarantine tank set up and my other tank set up, I do water changes on them. So I usually just take water from my display tank and then use that for the fish tanks, right? So I'm probably doing at least 10% a week. I've been using Brightwell salt for the past 6 months or so. So far, happy with it. But I've tried the no water change thing for a long time. You always end up in a spot where you're fighting nitrates down the road or something. And if you keep your water changes regular, if I'm doing them every week and I'm dosing 300 mils a day, I haven't adjusted my dosing amount in months, pretty much. Like some sometimes my alk will be 9.2 and then it'll be 8.4, and I just kind of let it do its thing. I stopped chasing it. It'll change daily, right? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I dose 24 times a day. It'll go from 8.8 to, like, yesterday it went from 8.8 to 9 over in one day, right? Or 9.1. So, I mean, I just try to keep everything as stable as possible, but not chase. If that.
That's good advice. You know, I always try not to overreact when I see certain things on my test kits or the monitors and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think that's very important. You don't want to like just go too into the weeds and try to be a numbers chaser. I also feel like you got to like observe the tank on a daily basis and let the corals do the talking in terms of like whether or not you need to do any course correcting.
And the only thing that, like, when I got dinos, my corals were acting funny before it happened. Like, I could tell there was something, and it was my nitrates were 0, and I had the hand at the time. I got rid of my Salifert kit because the Hannah came out, and I'm like, Salifert, see you later, right? Now I've got the HR, and then the reagents were out of stock, so I had no reagents, and so I just kept things as normal, and I could tell, like, hey, the corals look like they're hungry. So I'd feed more. I was feeding more, but my phosphates were going up and my nitrates were still 0. So that was, but yeah, no, I test a lot. That's big for me. I test all the time. Trident is amazing. And at first it was stressful, but so now that I got used to it, it's a great tool. Having an automatic tester is a great tool. I wouldn't trust it to dose for me, but to monitor, it's a great tool.
So you're just using it as a monitor, not a controller.
Yeah. So what does Jake say? I'm the controller.
Yeah, there you go.
No. Just a monitor. There's been a couple times where it's gone off the charts where I'm like, yeah, no, that's not true. I think it has a fail safe or it would stop.
Yeah.
So it is pretty safe to let it dose, but I mean, it's not hard to just open your app for your Comor or whatever doser you're using and just add 5 mils or add 10 mils that week or whatever, right? So why do you need all that extra? Why do you have to have everything connected together? It's just too many fails that could happen.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I think that the only thing that I will do in terms of if I'm away or something and my alkalinity starts like creeping one direction or the other, with the calcium reactor, I'll adjust the pH set point inside the reactor to help adjust it up or down in terms of the alkalinity. But I won't do that unless it's really just kind of creeping on a constant basis, and usually you like to see it kind of like creeping lower and lower and lower because that means the corals are healthy and consuming more calcium and alkalinity. Question for you from James Scott. Jay, did you have any issue tuning the Nio skimmer?
No. Well, my sump is deep and I'm limited space in that area. Like, I didn't realize how big the Nios was when I ordered it. I originally wanted the Reef Octopus external skimmer, and they're all sold out at the time. And then I measured, and I'm like, oh, the Nios is going to fit in this sump. So I ordered 300, put it in. I adjusted it in the water for its like the height. Once it's deep. I have it deeper than they recommend, and it seemed like it seemed to be adjusted right away. I mean, I pull out probably 2 gallons a week.
Oh wow, that's a lot.
Skimmate.
Well, you got a lot of fish. How many fish do you have?
I don't know. I should count. I have no idea. Like 60, 70.
That's a lot of fish.
It's hard to. Yeah, a lot of tangs, a lot of, and the vodka dosing will make your skimmer kind of go a little bit nuts. It's another reason why filter socks kind of suck too, because it clogs the filter socks up and with all that bacteria, right? So I I'd like to get off of it, but I feel like it feeds the corals also. Every time I've been off of it, I lost a little bit of coloration. So, and I keep it as like a tool at my disposal in case something goes off. I can always just increase that and control my nutrients that way, or control my phosphates basically instead of using GFO.
So a few more questions here from the viewers. Adrian Fang, is there any benefits to testing for and dosing iodine in your opinion?
Every time I've done an ICB test, I've been low on
I get
iodine.
0.
Yeah, so, and I always get warned to add this.
Oh, we lost Jay there for a second. Hopefully he'll bounce back. You there, Jay? Give him another couple of minutes here. Hopefully we'll get Jay back. That darn Wi-Fi. Jay, can you hear me? Hang on, folks. We're going to try to get Jay back on here. Hello, Jay. Let me see if I can call him back here. All right, I lost him. See if we can get him back. Jay, you there?
Yeah, sorry, I have ghetto internet. I knew it was gonna fail me.
Well,
now I'm on my phone.
Now we got you on the phone in portrait mode there.
Yeah.
Maybe turn it to landscape. All right, we fixed that little technical difficulties there. Sorry about that, folks. We got him back.
Oh no, my wife just messaged. She's I was just on the computer, so we
Oh, she knocked you off, you mean?
Yes, yeah, she knocked me off. So sorry about that, guys.
All right, man. What were we talking about? Iodine, right?
Yeah. Every time I've done an ICP, it came back when my iodine was low or iodide. And you can kind of tell when it's getting low or your iron's getting low also because your chaeto will start turn color.
Yeah.
Like if you do a huge water change, all of a sudden your chaeto is like it grows like crazy, and then it starts to get darker and darker and darker and slow down. So I have dosed it. After my dinos, I've been trying the replenish from Brightwell. I used to use for trace ESV, but it's hard to get the transition elements.
Yeah.
Transition. Yeah.
Yep. I used to use that.
ESV also has some trace in it too. But yeah, no. I guess I'll just keep doing the ICB test every 6 months or so, and then seeing where I'm at. It's the only thing that was off for me was iodine.
Yeah, I still dose. I bacteria dose, and I used to have chaeto, and I took the chaeto offline, and but I'm still dosing the Brightwell's chaeto grow because the iron in that, and then the other elements in that. So I think that's been beneficial, for me. Question from Reef Under the Roof. Great talk. What's the perfect pH and nitrate levels in your guys' opinion? I think we kind of touched on that. I mean, you're in the 8.2 to 8.5 range in terms of your pH. I'm kind of like in the same ballpark. One system I'm 8.3 to 8.4 to 8.5, 8.3 to 8.5, I guess, and the other system 8.3 to 8.4. So yeah, I think there's definitely some great benefits to having that elevated pH, especially with the SPS. You could just see that supercharged growth.
Yeah, it's insane. I mean, I've never had pH before. It was the same house before above 8.3.
So even in the wintertime, you're in a basement, a finished basement. I'm assuming that in the wintertime in Canada, you got the windows closed and you're still doing 8.2 to 8.5?
Yeah, all windows closed. Yeah, but I do have an air exchanger.
Same here.
A whole home. whole mix, that was huge.
Yeah.
The Nile skimmer, my pH went up big time with that skimmer.
Oh.
Just having it, I mean, it's a much bigger skimmer, right? So all that off gassing, more open, a lot of surface movement on my tanks. I don't. There's no places for waste really to settle and trap in my tank, and so you can always tell like your pH is slowly starting to creep down, and your sand bed's getting full of stuff. Your spots in your sump are full of waste, and all that's just driving your pH down, right? But I mean, maybe in the basement where I'm breathing less next to the tank too.
Yeah.
The dog's not there, right? No.
Yeah, you get a crowd of people. That's not good for the pH.
Yeah. The only allowed person at a time in my house now. No, I haven't let anybody in. Maybe that's why COVID made my tank grow fast.
There you go.
Yeah.
In terms of nitrates, you mentioned that I think you like the 2.5 to 5 range. You're currently at 12.
Yeah, I'm at 12. The only with the higher nitrates, the things I noticed in my tank, I get some turf algae pop up on my frag racks in the egg crate, and then besides that, you get random little patches of algae here and there, so it's a safer level probably to be at. Just if everybody just kind of kept it around the 10, but not chase it.
Yeah.
I mean, I always see that answer on a forum. It's like corals dying. What's this? And everybody's, oh, what's your nutrients at? Well, it's probably not that. I mean, it takes a long time for a coral to die from.
I think unless your nutrients are like zeroed out, then that would, if you're at least getting some levels of nitrates and phosphates. I mean, I like to have my nitrates in the 2.5 to 5 part per million range myself. But yeah, I think we're both on the same page as that. S4 Monster, you both have amazing systems, huge financial investments. How do you ever go on vacation? And if you do, is there a limit of how long you are comfortable being away? Yeah, I'm never comfortable going away at all, but a couple of days is fine. A week, I start getting nervous.
I'm nervous going to work.
You're nervous going to work?
Yeah. I've never gone on vacation and it was like, oh, I came back, everything was with no issues. There's always something, right? There's always something failed. I would like to be able to. My goal is to have my tank set up so I can leave for a week and not stress. And I have cameras on my sump, cameras on my tank. So if I ever had to, I could instruct somebody. I need to get a labeler and label the pipes and lines and pumps, and maybe set up like some sort of checklist.
Yeah.
If something goes wrong and I have someone here like my mom or somebody watching the house that she can go through that checklist. The biggest issue I had on vacation once was I had a breaker fail. And I was only gone for a weekend. And the weird thing was the breaker failed. It was a 20 amp breaker on my panel. It failed, but was still in the on position. So you can turn it. So when someone looked at the panel, there's no power in any of those plugs. I know that they're not getting power. The breaker, you can turn it on and off, and it wouldn't come back on. Eventually, after going back and forth a bunch of times, it turned on. I replaced the breaker. Everything was fine. So you think you're perfect, but there's always that one thing. So I do have the tank on 3 separate breakers. So I only lost a few things, but that were off. So that was another fail safe, I guess.
Yeah, I think my biggest rule of thumb is before I go on vacation, I never try to do anything major in terms of major changes to the tank in terms of equipment. Just try to keep things as routine as possible and not make any big changes or do any major maintenance on the tank.
Yeah. No, like a month before, clean your pumps, check everything over. Don't do it the night before, right?
This is a good question. Reef under. What was that?
Don't add a new fish a day before you go, right, or anything like that. Don't.
Rob, upstate New York, thanks, man, for the super chat. The comment, here's to calling the wife at lunch and asking, how's the reef? This is a good question. Reef under the roof. What are your biggest aha moments in growing acros?
Biggest aha moment? I think when my pH went over 8.3 and held there. Maybe. Aha. I don't know if I've had an aha. I'm really trying to think here now. Flow. It's, yeah, you can tell when the flow is perfect. And then you look at that millie and the polyps are going up and down, like, and just everything's perfect. But if you don't have your flow right, I mean, I struggle with flow. Maybe I look too far into it. Or I stare at my acros like every other night, and how come that polyp's not open?
Question. What are some of your favorite acros? Let's talk some corals here. What pieces do you like the most in terms of SPS?
Like SPS wise, just it's the basic ones that are my favorite. Like that blue tip stag I have, I love it. I have a green slimer. It's not a traditional. I call it a green slimer because it's slimy. I don't know if it's the actual green valley green slimer, but it's. Sorry, I'm just gonna plug my phone. It's I mean, deep water. I love all deep water acros. Millies were always my favorite, I think.
Yeah, I'm a big millie fan too.
I'm not a big. I'm not big into the tenuous. I have an orange passion. It's amazing. To look at it closely. I have a bunch. I have a bunch of other names, but unless you're like top down view staring at it with, it doesn't. It's not the same. The growth rate of them, I'm not as fond of the growth pattern. Maybe it's just the way my tank's set up. Like I like how like a big stag will grow, or I like how a millie will plate out kind of like, and I like some of the deep waters how you can have them lower in the tank. I don't know if that answered your question. For a while, I was really into like all the dragons.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, they're amazing, right? But if you don't keep up with them, keep up fragging and they choke themselves out, right?
Yeah, so, I know.
Kinda...
you have the rainbow splice, don't you?
I have my version of it.
Your version of it.
Yeah.
And what does that version look like?
It was a weird, like, I guess it used to be a pink and bluish gray coral with like kind of green polyps. And then at one point, a couple of years ago, all of a sudden it took on like a green protein.
Oh.
And it started like infecting it with like that green streaks.
Yeah.
Throughout the coral. And the only thing I can think of is what happened is I had a Moorish idol at the time, and he decided he wanted to eat acros, and he would always go eat a green candy cane and then go munch on this acro. And it seemed to be okay, but I'm wondering that at one point that he forced that candy cane, those coloration into it, or is it just from being under attack all the time? Did it just do it in defense? I don't know.
One of those unknowns out there.
Yeah, no idea. Maybe someone one day will be able to say, "I know this is why." But so ever since then, I just keep fragging that section of it and separating it, so I have like a small colony in my frag tank.
And when you frag it, is it still if you frag like one color, will it eventually develop that second color, or is it just behaving like a regular coral?
It seems to, if I frag the green out of it and keep the green the green will take over. It seems. So I frag some of the regular and then mix the two together, and they'll kind of mix again, like splice them together. Cool. But if you leave it alone and don't frag it, one will win. it's like you kind of always. I mean, in my display, the main colony, it's mostly just the original coral. There's a couple spots the green streaking out, so I kind of cut around it and keep that.
Yeah, that's what I've heard about the rainbow splices. That it seems like one color, the green, dominates. But I guess it depends on who you ask. Definitely seems like a unique piece.
I think unless you keep working at it, it'll go. One will take over. Like what it has for me, right? I mean, I don't know why it's called a splice. Is it they didn't actually take two corals and cut them in half and then splice them together? Like it's just.
Yeah, I don't know the origins of the whole thing. I gotta dig a little bit deeper myself.
Yeah.
All right, man. Listen, it's we've been on for an hour and a half, and I want to be respectful of your
Okay.
time. Any final thoughts, Jay, before we wrap it up? Any advice for folks out there?
I'm gonna say, yeah, keep it simple. Don't fall for all those elixirs and potions that all the companies are pushing down our throats. I mean, we've been reading for a long time, and all these stuff are new. We were fine before. I don't have 10 different dosing pumps running my system. I just started dosing nitrates for the first time a couple months ago, and like I'm just if it's nothing happens fast, right? And monitor your corals, test often, and relax.
That's good advice.
The simpler your tank is, the more you're going to enjoy the hobby. And find a good club and the friends you'll make out of it are amazing, and you'll have someone for advice out of that. So find someone you can get for advice and a good club. That helps a lot.
Yeah, I totally agree with that thinking. Mentors are a great thing, and like-minded folks definitely can help one another for sure.
Find a coral bank.
What's that?
Find a coral
bank.
Yeah,
there you go. Yes, coral banks.
I've lost a lot of acro and wish I had that coral again, right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah, if you don't have two systems and you can't back it up, then get a buddy to have a bank your corals. So, all right, they could find you on the web at unorthodoxreef.ca, right? On Instagram as unorthodox_reef. Anything else we want to tell folks out there to how to find you?
I mean, one day I got to get used to YouTube and set it up. I am on YouTube, but I've tried to make a couple of videos, and it ends up taking so much time that I'd rather just look at my tank.
It does take. I could definitely say that producing YouTube videos is it takes a lot of time. Definitely takes a lot of time.
They don't make it easy. You think the music's everything's hard, right? But Instagram's easy. I'm on Instagram often. If anybody has any questions, feel free to send me a message. I try to answer everybody. Facebook, I have a Facebook page, Unorthodox Reef. You can reach me there too. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Well, Jay, man, listen, thank you so much for being a guest. I really appreciate you being on, and I love talking reef with you, man. So, yeah, thanks to Jay, and thanks to everybody else out there tuning in. I also want to thank both Bulk Reef Supply and Ecotech Marine for being the sponsors of the live stream tonight, and thank to you people out there in terms of contributing to the conversation, and the questions were awesome. Also want to make sure that you know that all episodes of Rappin With ReefBum are now available as podcasts on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Stitcher, not Stitchers. And finally, if you'd like to recommend a guest for the show, and it cannot be you, then please direct message me on Instagram. My next live stream, we were talking about clubs there, Jay, is going to be Paul Allen, who's the president of Boston Reefer Society. So he's going to be a guest next Thursday, March 10th at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. He's also the moderator. Great Bearded Reef. Thank you, Paul, man, for being a moderator. We'll get to see your face next week on the live stream. So it should be another great show. Until then, be safe, be well, and we will see you next time.
Thanks a lot.